Alright, you guys. Today we're going to be making probably one of the bigger Fortnite Save the World guide videos I've ever made. And it was inspired by a conversation that I had with, I think, a fan of my channel, Bubba, in our Discord the other day. It was a rare opportunity where I was just kind of hanging out in a public channel, and it was a really, really nice kid. And he was in Lower Stonewood, and talking to him and Jaffe, a friend of mine a lot of you might know already from my streams, who is also very early in the game, it became pretty obvious that they were both very unfamiliar with some of the most simple aspects of the game. And one of the things that inspired me to think about was how to get certain items. And while I'm streaming, almost every single time, somebody asks me something about how to get a certain item. Or more often, they're blatantly asking me to give them Sunbeam, which is an unfortunately common question. But what I end up doing is basically showing them how to get that certain item. And it occurs to me that I have not seen, and I did look, any place on the internet where you can find an entire video showcasing how to get every single item and save the world. And I do mean every single item, starting from the bottom, how to get rough ore and planks and nuts and bolts, and working our way all the way to the top, showing you how to get oxidized mineral powder and Sunbeam and Brightcore, some of the most valuable stuff in the game. I'm going to say it now just because I know it's going to come up. I'm going to be skipping over 6-star materials. This is stuff that was introduced in the game long, long ago, and as I understand it, there were quite a few glitches in the early days where people's inventories are getting wiped, and one of the mistakes Epic employees made was refunding people's inventories with the wrong materials. So what they would do is, whenever your inventory got wiped, if they didn't have a recent backup, they would just give you like a couple of stacks of every item in the game, which pretty much solved the problem for a lot of people. However, instead of capping out at Sunbeam and Brightcore, people are getting Rainbow Crystal, Moon Glow, Spectralite. I don't have it all. I do have VenderTech parts to show you guys here, but I don't have any of the spectral, whatever it's called, the spectral twine. I do also have honey. That's another story, and also unobtainable, so we won't be talking about it. And then it's escaping me, but there is a 6-star powder as well that was passed around. You guys can tell me in the comments below. I will be skipping over 6-star materials simply because it's only obtainable through player-to-player communication, i.e. trading, or gifted to me because people really wanted me to have Rainbow Crystal that day. But you can't obtain this in the game through normal gameplay, so I will be skipping over it, and I'm just getting it out of the way right now just to cover it. Going forward with this video, it'll basically be sectioned. So in the description, I will have timestamps to the best of my ability for every single item in the game, and I will be grouping them. So showing my storage here, I will be starting all the way at the bottom, like I mentioned, with the rough ore, planks, and nuts and bolts, and then I'll be working my way up. And we have sectioned this between the different areas. So you've got all the white stuff with the nuts and bolts, the batteries, bacon, and then the powders will all be in their own section. The crystals, Quartz, Sunbeam, and Shadowshard will all be in their own section. And then all of the ores, copper, silver, malachite, obsidian, and Brightcore will all be in their section. And then the mechanical parts will all be in their section, including rotating Gizmo, which is it's more of a surrogate mechanical part. It's mainly used for epic schematics. We'll get into all that later. The twines will also all be in their own section, and then I believe that just about covers it, but it'll all be listed in the description below, so you guys can check it out if you want to jump around. Another way to get a lot of the items in the game, like mechanical parts and the quartz crystals and just all the different crystals and crafting materials and power cells, etc., rotating gizmos, are mist monsters and lobbers and like fatties. Certain like higher level husks in the game do have a chance to drop all of these items, including building materials and ammo and planks, but I'm not really going to mention that throughout the entirety of this video because they're just it's uncommon, and it's a really passive normal way to get them, and you should be targeting mist monsters and zombies generally anyway. So it's not a good way to get any one item, but usually when I kill a smasher, I'm kind of expecting like a mechanical part or maybe Shadowshard or something, but that's just one of the many ways to get it. And I figured it would be irresponsible for me to not mention that, because I feel like somebody could be thinking that and think, Beast, you forgot about this other way to get items. No, I didn't. It's just sort of a normal gameplay mechanic, just like looting normal chests and boxes and whatnot. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. We're going to be kicking off the list with one of the most simple items in the game, and that is rough ore. Rough ore is basically just obtainable through punching rocks and different ores that you find around the map. This is going to start a long-running trend of one of the things I'll probably be saying a million times throughout this video. It is also obtainable through searching containers within, around the map and different chests, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I don't think you can, well, you can find a 6, but you can't find a 7-star chest in the map. And then storm chests and encampments will also give this. Rough ore is mainly obtained like from encampments and anomalies through the ones that have the little brick on them. You can get rough ore from those as well. And there are a lot of different ways to get rough ore. You kind of just get it from everything. This is probably not one of the most highly requested items in this video. I'm sure plenty of you guys have more rough ore than you know what to do with. Second on the list, we have planks, which is about as boring as rough ore. You basically get it from punching trees. That's basically it. Trees, bunches of logs. If you find those little log containers where you can search them, you get planks from those as well. And then, of course, from searching all different types of containers, you also get planks. If you want to beeline for them with encampments, you want to look for the encampments that have the wood symbol on top. Upon completion, you'll get various wood items and twine relation to the area that you're in. And you should also get a fair few planks. Same with anomalies. My personal suggestion for the fastest way to get planks is either taking Archaeologist or whatever the best new Outlander setup is in the future, going into a forest and then just punching as many trees as possible. Or you could just go to Plankerton and barter yourself a few stacks of planks. Hey, does anybody have any spare planks?
What?
Yeah, hold up.
Come here for 1 sec.
Oh, yep. Thanks, man. Next up on the list, we have nuts and bolts, which are by far one of the most commonly used and needed materials that you will have throughout the entirety of your playthrough of Save the World. Straight up from Stonewood all the way to Twine Peaks, you're going to be using this to craft all of the different ammo types and lots of different traps, and it'll basically be just an all-around necessity throughout your entire playthrough. And a lot of times, people can think that it's extremely hard to get because they haven't exactly discovered Outlanders. I always used to have tons of trouble getting them because punching cars was really annoying. It was taking like 5 or 6 hits per car at my level, and it was just, a really, really slow process. But later on, I learned that Outlanders were a thing and that you could just, punch with your anti-material charge. Nowadays, you just right-click your pickaxe with your favorite Outlander setup. Link in the description below to my favorite loadout and personal, farming guide. Archaeologist is probably one of the best Outlanders to use, and this is going to be a great thing to know for the rest of this video because it'll help in getting pretty much every single item in this game. Especially for nuts and bolts, if you just go around into an industrial zone or a city zone punching cars, or if you find those electrical areas where you just make one big punch. My friends and I have a running little competition to see how many nuts and bolts we can get from one punch. My personal record was from a Striker AC where it doubled my loot, and I got about 190 nuts and bolts from one punch. But that was a singular occurrence, and most of the time we usually get about 140. However, with this new update, you can definitely still get a whole bunch of those in one punch, and it's just a big influx of nuts and bolts just from one big punch. Of course, expeditions are a good way to go about it if you just send out those ones with the little red box. Warcraft is like the highest one that you can send out. You'll get tons of nuts and bolts. And of course, you'll get it from searching chests, searching containers, anything mechanical. This is going to go in line with mechanical parts. Pretty much anywhere where you can get mechanical parts, you will always get nuts and bolts. So a lot of those sinks and different, anything mechanical, you kind of just have to explore around the map. I mean, little stuff like a fire hydrant, it's 2 hits and it can give you parts, but can also give you nuts and bolts. So cars are the most direct way to go. Just throw on an Outlander and hit up a city or industrial zone. You'll get tons of nuts and bolts. You won't even know what to do with them. Okay, so this is going to be kind of a 2-for-1 because flower petals and fibrous herbs are effectively the same thing in terms of how you get them. Not only can you get them from, of course, as always, searchable containers and chests, you can get them basically from searching bushes and flowers on the ground, or you can find them all sorts of different bushes. I'll show a few different examples, and then you can get them a lot of times, of all places, in desert tiles where you can get those little scraggly half bush things. You can get lots and lots and lots of fibrous herbs from forests and deserts. Just search all over the place. These are integral. So part of the reason I'm making this video is to teach about what all these different, materials are used for. And as a low-level player, fibrous herbs are just junk. And so are flower petals. Flower petals, I can ease your mind now and say that they're pretty much never going to be useful. The only time I ever use them are cozy campfires, which are one of my personal favorite traps. You can use them to heal in very dire situations. 2 or 3 of these will cancel out a ricochet mini-boss, by the way. Very good to use, especially when you can slap them down in encampments and whatnot. But that's pretty much the only use for flower petals, so I personally don't carry more than a stack. Anytime I roll over to that 200 mark, I just throw away the 200. Fibrous herbs, on the other hand, are used for one of the most important traps in the entire game, gas traps. It takes 7 fibrous herbs to craft one of these guys, along with the bacon and nuts and bolts, as we mentioned previously. But fibrous herbs are the key thing here because of how hard they are to get. And it's not that they're difficult, they're just very grindy. You're just going to have to constantly be searching bushes and looting around the map. And while I wouldn't recommend doing that, I would honestly recommend, while you're playing the game normally, doing your missions as you do, just search bushes as you go. You'll find that you'll get maybe a couple of dozen or, even 50 or more per mission just passively looting all these different bushes. And if you are playing on PC, if you just hold down F and walk up to these bushes, it's pretty easy to just get them as you go. So, fibrous herbs are pretty easy to obtain in bulk if you make a go of it. And of course, I mix them in with flower petals because you'll be getting them from the exact same source, which are just random looting containers and bushes on the ground. So now that you know what fibrous herbs are used for, I would highly recommend saving up as many of these as you can, because even if you're a low-level player, you will need these in bulk. Gas traps are expensive. They are very expensive. 7 each might not sound like a lot, but in the higher level missions, if you're using your traps even fairly wisely, you can use upwards of like 2 dozen or more, and that is a lot of fibrous herbs. Now, one of the things I actually forgot to mention is if you want to hunt fibrous herbs as well, if you're doing it in those desert tiles like I mentioned, or ghost towns, I don't know if this is going to stay forever, because ghost towns were kind of added as a new zone recently-ish, like a few months ago. But if you find those corn or those hay mazes, you can find the Hay King, which may or may not be a reference to The Office. That's a different point in and of itself. But if you kill him, you can get like 10 to 15 or 16 or 17 fibrous herbs. I'm not sure the exact range, but you can get a decent amount just by punching him. By no means is this like the best way to get fibrous herbs, because if you back out of the mission and just try to farm him over and over, odds are you will get way more fibrous herbs from just searching bushes than farming him. But if you ever find him in game, he's definitely a good guy to hit up. Going naturally through the list, we have batteries, which are probably one of the most boring items in the game. They're pretty much obtainable in the exact same way as mechanical parts and nuts and bolts. You will get them from effectively the same thing, just anything mechanical. Cars will give you batteries, looting containers, etc., etc. Batteries are the kind of thing that you can sort of just forget about because they come from so many different sources that you'll just sort of get them as you go. But if you want to get these in bulk, and I believe I should have mentioned this for the other ones previously, but it's not that big of a deal. If you ever find those encampments with the hammer and the anvil, those crafting material ones are pretty good. You can get these from expeditions as well, and the anomalies that have that little hammer thing, and also radar grids. I suppose I forgot that for the ones earlier, but it's really not that big of a deal. I don't expect too many people to be going to the effort of a radar grid to get these items. It's definitely not the most efficient way, but it will work. But yeah, batteries are pretty basic. They're pretty much only used for, well, energy ammo does take batteries. Energy weapons do take batteries to craft. If I can find one right here, I just scrolled past it. You can see it takes 15 batteries just for my energy weapons. And then they are used for a number of traps. Seeing electric fields take a couple of them. Just 1 or 2 batteries is kind of a common trend. I do believe wall lights might take up. Really? I always get this one wrong. Don't worry about me. But batteries, they're used for a couple of traps, but they're not really the most integral ingredient. I would never recommend carrying more than 1,000 and some change of these. You kind of get them from everywhere. Bacon, bacon, bacon. Bacon is that item that you kind of thought was silly in the beginning. You got it in Save the World and you thought, wow, there's food in this game. But then you realize that you can't eat it. And for some reason, it's really, really rare. And you kind of forgot about it because it wasn't taking up too much storage, but you never quite knew what it was for. Well, I can tell you as a high-level player, bacon is probably one of the most important crafting materials in the entire game, simply because of what it's used for. And that is 2 key things that I'm going to address right now, not everything. First and foremost, energy cells. Very recently, I'll link my video in the description below, they released the neon weapons back into the game as a full addition to the game. No more neon llamas, no more event. They are officially in the game. And as I mentioned earlier with my batteries, the Mercury LMG is one of the weapons that uses bacon for the ammo because it uses the energy ammo. The Mercury LMG is one of the most powerful assault weapons in the entire game. It is just hands down a very, very devastating weapon, and I would highly recommend everybody get one. And the Neon Sniper is kind of its counterpart, the sniper version. It shoots through walls. It's very, very nice. So again, you can check that out in the video description below. I'll tease some footage on the screen so you can see how it looks. But both of these have something in common. That's that energy cells take bacon. And honestly, it's not that much. If you make an effort to loot around the map and you hit up kind of the areas that I'll talk about in a second, you shouldn't ever have any trouble getting bacon from different sources. And you should always have enough bacon to craft all the energy cells that you need. I've been mentioning a lot that expeditions are a good way to go, and they are. But if you just send out expeditions 2 or 3 a day, you'll have more bacon than you know what to do with, and it's just going to stack up in your inventory. I would never, ever recommend throwing bacon away. I don't care if you have 3,000 of it. Okay, if somehow you've amassed 3,000 of them, then you can add me. My name is XMistaBeastX. Just send me a friend request, and I'll take it. Don't worry. Bacon is so important because once you run low on it, it's kind of hard to come back. But with these couple of tricks, I'll show you exactly how to get it. First and foremost, in no particular order, actually there's no reason I'm ordering it this way, but first and foremost, porta potties, of all things, they'll give you bacon. Toilets, I believe, also give you bacon. Beds, I've heard, give you bacon. I mean, any searchable container will give you bacon, but certain containers will give you more. Anytime you find those little spam containers on the ground, pick them up. They always drop bacon, and they're a great source of it. However, none of these are even close to corn stalks. Yeah, I just said corn stalks. For some reason, corn stalks 100% of the time give you only bacon. And you can find them in mass in, I believe, Ghost Town tiles have these corn stalk patches around the map. I'll show some footage now where if you're not trying to complete the mission and you just queue in, look for these tiles, use like an Outlander or Fleetfoot Ken for the 37.5% speed bonus as your commander, or the Pathfinder Jess, I believe she was broken in the past update, but if she dashes, you can move for 140% speed. Point being, if you use a fast-moving, hero and just get around the map searching for these different corn stalk patches, they should give you about like 30 to 60 bacon in a go. And it should only take you like 10 minutes tops to find all of them around the map. Then you just leave the game, queue back in, and then get more. Even if you're only getting like 100 bacon an hour, that is plenty. 100 bacon is 10,000 energy cells, which is kind of a lot. And, the only thing that they're used for in gas traps is just it's one bacon per gas trap. So even if you craft a stack of them, that's like 200. And so, that's a very good source of bacon. Like I mentioned, you shouldn't need to do this, but if you've only got a couple of hundred bacon, it might behoove you to do this and then get to where I'm at, which is a very comfortable 1,000. At 1,000, I can craft a stack of gas traps and still have 800 more just for energy cells, and then it's gonna be a while before I'm running low. But if you want to get to that point, then the corn stalks are definitely a good way to go. Sort of as a epilogue, if you will, just sort of a follow-up point, that is not the only thing that bacon is used for in this game. Healing pads are another huge use of bacon, fibrous herbs, and flower petals. I didn't mention them in the fibrous herbs and flower petals because I forgot, but the point is the healing pads are really not that amazing. I mean, you can level them up and they'll heal you for a ton in one go, but once you get to the level where you're leveling these up to a decent schematic, decent perks and everything, you shouldn't really be needing it. Adrenaline rush is a thing. Like I mentioned, campfires are quite powerful and significantly cheaper. There's just a better way to spend 5 bacon and 15 fibrous herbs than exactly 1 healing pad. Not that these aren't unusable, I just personally cannot recommend them. An extra point to note for both duct tape and bacon is defender posts. Defender posts are quite powerful for, obviously, defenders. We use them quite a lot in Twine. I can show it right here. Some of my sniper defenders. You lock these guys in a box with an obliterator, and they will do so much damage. It's crazy. You can basically AFK missions if you're a high enough level. And defender posts cost 1 bacon and 1 duct tape. So maybe not the biggest use case, but definitely worth having. And I'm not sure how I'm going to share this information. I'll probably just mix it in between duct tape and bacon because it's kind of, half and half. But something that's good to know. And if you didn't know, now you do. Next on our list to go alongside bacon is its other important counterpart, duct tape. Duct tape shares the bacon quality in that it is only usable in very certain schematics for very high cost or very single cost as a key ingredient. Duct tape is also quite uncommon. Like I said, with bacon, you can get it from searchable containers. It's quite rare. You can get it that way, though. The best way that I have found to find duct tape consistently, and this is the only way that I've really found, are ducks. If you ever find those rubber duckies just around the map, they can be hidden anywhere, but I'll be showing on screen right now that you can find them in like ponds or lakes and like the desert tiles, the ghost towns. Finding duct tapes there is great. If you go into the underground caverns, I don't think I'll be able to get footage of this. They're kind of rare and hard to find. But if you go into the underground caverns, you can find ducks just kind of sitting in there, and there's like 5 or 6 or 7 of them. And the reason ducts are important is because each one that you break, they drop a certain amount of duct tape, and I have found is in as little as like 5 or 6 ducts you can get like 15 duct tape. And that might not sound like a lot, but because like I mentioned, like for example floor spikes, if you use the blue schematic, it only takes 1 duct tape for each of them, so that's 15 floor spikes. And if you do this regularly and you kind of back out of the mission and farm it over and over, you will get a lot of duct tape by just grabbing those ducts. This might not be the best way to get it, but it's the only way that I've found that is like consistent, and I guess it's fast enough to get what you need. But duct tape is used in kind of just a lot of random weapons, like really low level shotguns and low level pistols might take duct tape. Definitely the gray weapons can use duct tape. So you're probably never ever going to be using duct tape on any of your weapons, because if you are, then that weapon is probably a low enough level. Trust me, a green strong arm is not worth 4 duct tape, but it's pretty much like I mentioned. It's only used in the really low level stuff. Once you move on to the blue and epic schematics, you can see that in this stinger, the duct tape gets replaced with rotating gizmos. And rotating gizmos, we'll talk more about later, are namely used in rare and epic schematics and then get replaced by the mechanical parts later on. So that's why they'll be in their own segment alongside mechanical parts. But, TLDW, duct tape is very, very good for very specific traps. It's used for 2 main traps, and that's wooden floor spikes and the wooden wall spikes. Wall spikes lately have been getting a lot more recognition. Used with certain constructor loadouts, they can be used to deal significant damage when zombies attack the wall, but this video isn't about wall spikes, it's about duct tape. So duct tape, you might want to save it for that, but it's maybe not best used there. My pro tip is for wooden floor spikes to keep them blue. That way it costs 1 duct tape instead of 2, so you'll be using half as much duct tape for effectively the same use case, because late game we don't use wooden floor spikes for damage, we use it to slow enemies within our tunnels. So the less duct tape we use, the better, and the less overall material cost we use, the better. So that's kind of how to get duct tape. I'm sorry that I don't have a better method, but if you just farm ducts, or like I mentioned with Fibrous herbs, maybe not just specifically farm the ducts, but just sort of grab them whenever you see them around the map. Spas work great as well. I'm sad I didn't mention that right away. You can just get them passively throughout your playthroughs, and so long as you're not using crap tons of wooden floor spikes in every mission, you should always be profiting on duct tape, or at least hovering around a certain amount. Now, it is also worth noting that duct tape can be crafted, and that's where I'm going to mix this segment in with adhesive resin, and that is just don't use it. Adhesive resin, it's just, if you really need duct tape and you're really okay on fibrous herbs, go ahead and craft it. I would never recommend this because fibrous herbs are so much more better. They're so much better used for gas traps than, like, I would rather have 1 or 2 more gas traps and no floor spikes than have those floor spikes. Like, it's just not, it's not comparable. Fibrous herbs are not to be used for duct tape. You can do it. I'm not going to stop you, but I can't recommend this. And that's where I'm going to say adhesive resin kind of goes along with this, because as far as I am aware, it is only used as a crafting ingredient for duct tape. I'm not sure I'm aware of any other use case where adhesive resin is a thing. So, yeah, definitely save it for, well, the trash. I only keep like a stack and some change because I usually forget that it exists, and it's just sort of an extra item in the game. So, coal and black powder are a pretty easy segment because they are basically the same thing. Blast powder is an interesting item because it is, as far as I'm aware, the only item in the game that is purely obtainable through crafting. These guys take 4 rough ore and 1 coal apiece, and then you can craft 5 of them. So you're pretty much never going to have too little blast powder. I do get the question a lot from low-level players, and that's how do I get coal? And I'm like, seriously? How How do you get coal? The two main ways, well, obviously you can get them from containers and, materials and expeditions, blah, 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 the usual stuff. But you can also get them from searching the fire pits inside of houses. Believe it or not, I believe those still give you coal. They did when I was a low level, and I'm sure they do now. I haven't used this method in an extremely long time, that's why I'm saying when I was a low level, because it's kind of, I don't know, it's just another way to get coal. And we pretty much always get coal just from everything. If you play the game, you'll get it from every container. You can find it in caves. They're quite common, where you can just mine coal straight up as normal. Caves are a great resource of all the different types of ores, But coal is one of those things where if you are really low on it and you need lots of blast powder, then hit up a cave. Go into houses and find those fireplaces, search them, or search any searchable container. Or honestly, just ask your friends. If you've got any higher level friends, like me personally, I hover around 2 to 4 stacks of coal at any given time, and I don't need that much, so I usually give it away if somebody asks. And I personally use a lot of rocket launchers, so that actually go to show just how little coal you need. Like, it's 3 per one of these, and I don't know. Coal is kind of like batteries in that you just sort of get enough of it to always have as many as you need, so I don't really think about it that much. But yeah, I'll be merging coal and the blast powder in the same segment because they're basically the same item, and blast powder can only come from crafting. Next up, we're going to talk about one of the more fun items in the game, active power cells. Active power cells are just like any other, where I think one of the only ways to get them is from just looting random containers. They're pretty rare. You almost never get them from that. I mean, like, you can get them, but they're very, very uncommon. You might only get a dozen a day if you play a lot, but it's okay because active power cells are pretty much used by all legendary weapons. It's 1 per weapon. The key difference here is once you come up from epic, active power cells basically replace rotating gizmos, and that's kind of the key difference. And I say that they're fun because the main way to actually get active power cells are garden gnomes. Yeah, I'm being serious. If you find those flower shops or those gnome shops in cities or wherever you can find them, I believe they're in cities, you can get just a crap ton of gnomes, and they have a pretty decent chance of giving you active power cells. Alongside that, you can also get them from the duct tapes, as mentioned from the rubber ducky section right there. I'm not sure if I'll show this because it's pretty rare. I feel like it's probably like a 1 in 20 or less, but you can get active power cells from rubber duckies as well, but the main way are garden gnomes, and you're not going to have to concern yourself with these too much because you can see my inventory here. I've only got 171. That is 171 weapons. That is this much Sunbeam or this much Malachite. It's 11 for each of them. That is this many mechanical parts. I will run out of those way before I run out of power cells. So they're kind of one of those things that is tricky in the early game, but if you know to punch garden gnomes, you should never have a problem with these. So in my previous segment, I talked about power cells, and it would be pretty natural to lead into rotating gizmos, but I'm gonna mention that alongside the other mechanical parts, and I want to do that towards the end alongside the other crafting materials. So we're gonna back all the way up to here. We're gonna be going to the powders. So the powders are an interesting topic because this is one of our first big groups of items. Rough mineral powder is obtained in exactly the same way as oxidized mineral powder. It just depends on the zone you're searching in. So if you're a Stonewood player, you'll be finding rough, and then towards the end of Stonewood, you might be finding a bit of simple. If you're in Plankerton, you'll be finding a lot of simple mineral powder, and then towards the end of Plankerton, you might find fine grain. Fine grain is what you're going to find all throughout Canny until the very end, when you might be picking up bits of Char-Black mineral powder. These are used for your 106s, 82s, 58s, and then the 34, I think. And then when you are in the 94 plus zones in Twine, so 94 zones, it's kind of rare, but you'll definitely get them a lot in the 100 zones, is oxidized mineral powder. And pretty much all of these are obtained through rocks are the most direct way, just punching rocks. Deserts are great for these. Searching random containers will always give you oxidized mineral powder alongside chests and storm chests, etc. Again, I am talking about all of these, but oxidized might be the one that people are really looking to get more of. And Char-Black, I mean, you just get a lot of it from, Twine. And then you can also get them from encampments. So if you find that brick encampment, like I mentioned earlier, brick encampments, anomalies, radar towers will all give you all these different powders alongside mimics. Mimics give you pretty much every item in the game, but they have a chance to give you all the different powders. So if you really want to farm up any kind of mineral powder, punching rocks is the most direct way to just go and do it. While you're on that map, look for encampments that have the brick. Do the anomalies. They're worth it. Like, anomalies, yeah, you got to go around and grab all the different pieces that fly out, but you might get a decent amount of powder and stuff back. And this oxidized powder is used very, very late game for my gas traps, or your gas traps, or whatever build you're using. It doesn't matter, but wall launchers also use them. Floor launchers are very powerful. I'm not going to go through all the different traps, but a good amount of them use these different powders. And so do shotguns. So shotguns, I can show Hydra. That's technically an AR. Thanks, Epic. I don't have a shotgun leveled up, do I? Don't I have a pop shot? Am I blind here, guys? Am I blind? Okay, here we go. Pop shot's like the only shotgun I've leveled up, but you can see that it uses 30 Char-Black, and if I evolve this, I can actually demonstrate that. If I evolve it, it'll start using the Oxidized mineral powder and Sunbeam. So shotguns use Oxidized, and then I believe a lot of melee weapons do. So I don't have too many of these leveled up. I went the Sunbeam route on this one, so I can't show it, but it depends on what you use, but some of them do actually end up using the different powders. You can see my Guardian's Will takes 36 Char-Black, so kind of a lot. I don't personally use that many melees. They're not the best weapons in the game, but they do require all these different powders, and now you know how to get them. To follow up powders, we're going to talk about their counterpart, Twine. So in all the melee and shotguns that I just talked about, pistols tend to be the ones that use a lot of Twine, whereas shotguns tend to use a lot of powder. And then melee, it's basically just the difference between Sunbeam and Brightcore, and just, you know, melees always use their own different assortment of weapons, including a lot of batteries, but a lot of them use Twine. And the way to get that is basically the exact, like I mentioned, counterpart to powder. The most direct way is punching trees. So if you go into a forest and just go in with your archaeologist or your outlander loadout and you smack a bunch of trees, you should get plenty of Twine, I guess. Personally speaking, I once cleared an entire forest in Twine. It took me about 2.5 hours. I was watching You on Netflix. Fantastic show. But I only made out with like 200 Peaky Twine. So this stuff can be hard to get in one big go of it, but it's the kind of thing that you should get throughout an entire playthrough. You'll just get it all the time. As always, I'm a very broken record today. You can get it from normal chests. You can get it from, you know, chests and searchable items in general. And I think storm chests give you them as well. Storm chests are great because you can actually just recycle the items that you get back, and that does give you almost more materials than a storm chest could otherwise give you. I feel like I haven't mentioned that yet, but it hasn't really become relevant until now. So another way to get these is the wooden encampments. The wooden encampments will basically depend on the zone that you're in. So like, you know, Canny will give you the sturdy, and then Twine will give you the peaky. Plankerton is the simple, and then, you know, the stringy is in stonewood, and all of this sort of correlates to each other. Carved, you're only going to be getting in 100 zones in Twine and 94 zones. And same with the powders. If you didn't watch that segment, you're cutting to this. Peaky, you'll find in late Canny, but not for most of Canny. And sturdy, you might find towards the end of Plankerton, and simple, you might find towards the end of Stonewood. These are like the 19 level missions, if you will. And then all of this stuff you'll just get from, you know, not, like I mentioned, the encampments that have the wood on them. They'll give you wooden related items, so Twine and, you know, planks. And then if you search the wooden anomalies, the wooden radar grids, you should get all the different Twines from those. And, you know, like I mentioned, you'll just get them through normal play. You should get plenty. I used to value carved Twine, but I never really used it for anything, like, at all. So it just built up. So now I've got all of this carved and oxidized that I just don't use that much of. The only thing that I've personally found that's extremely useful for carved is these campfires. Going back to campfires. I use them a good bit. I don't personally use a lot of melees, so I don't use them there. And then, like, the only thing that I craft that actually uses these are deagles, which only use Peaky. So your mileage will vary. You know, this isn't, you know, my personal how to be me, but if you use a lot of Twine, then I'm hoping you know how to get it, but now you know how to kind of go for it. If you really want carved Twine or Peaky or any of that high level stuff, go to the zones that have them. You know, if you want Peaky, just go to a 100 zone forest and just punch a bunch of trees, do any of the wooden encampments while you're there, and maybe ask a friend. Maybe they have some extras. All right, we're definitely getting into the fun stuff. So up until this point, this entire video has been about pretty much all of the basic materials in this game. But now we're going to be talking about the stuff that I know a lot of you are probably been waiting for. This is the stuff you really want to know about, and that is how to get the mechanical parts, rotating gizmos, which is basically the same thing, and then the crafting materials for them up here, the ores and the crystals. So we're going to start with the mechanical parts here. Rotating gizmos are a bit tricky. I don't have a ton of information on how to get these because honestly, they're one of those items like batteries. They just pop into your inventory. You get them from looting containers. You get them from encampments or anything mechanical. I think you can sometimes get rotating gizmos. We'll kill a smashers here and there and they'll drop them. But rotating gizmos are pretty much only used for rare and epic schematics. So I'm imagining if you're worried about too many mechanical parts, you're probably out of the woods in terms of rotating gizmos. So we're not really gonna worry ourselves too much with those. The only one of the best weapons in the game that actually uses rotating gizmos is the Founder's Revolt. For whatever reason, you can't actually evolve this weapon. You can't upgrade its rarity like most other weapons. It is hard locked at epic, and it's honestly a fantastic weapon, but it uses rotating gizmos because it's an epic schematic. I can actually demonstrate that by going to any of my epic schematics that use rotating gizmos. You can see this burst sniper will use rotating gizmos, and then as soon as I increase rarity, it'll start to take power cells instead. So it's kind of a cool way to demonstrate that. But that's pretty much one of the only weapons that use was rotating gizmos, so we're just going to go right past that. And then same with the twine and the powders. The mechanical parts are all pretty boring to talk about if you think about it. Like, rusty mechanical parts you can get throughout the entire game because all of those different, all of those washing machines give you rusty mechanical parts. Even in a 100 zone twine, if you search those and break those, you'll get rusty parts. I guess it's just kind of a funny gimmick in the game, but you will mostly get these from just anything mechanical. So sinks give you them. Fire hydrants, those electrical boxes. If you search around and find those encampments that have metal on them, those will also give you rusty mechanical parts. Metal encampments, the radar towers, and the anomalies will all give you mechanical parts. Cars are the most direct way to go about it. Electrical appliances inside of kitchens are also pretty good. I'm not kidding. Go to a kitchen with an Outlander, loot it, like just search all the containers and then just punch through it. You might get a whole bunch of parts. It's probably worth your time. And that is not every mechanical item in the game. Server racks are also good, but so many things give you those. It's kind of hard to list them all. Seesaws, that comes to mind. If you go into those parks, you can just break all that stuff and they might just give you parts. Mechanical parts, that is. And then, of course, all of this information applies to all of these. So if you break seesaws in like, for example, stonewood, you get rusty. If you break them in 100 zones, you might get efficient or sleek. And this is the same thing as twine and powder. Rusty is for stonewood, and then in late stonewood, you'll get simple, and in plankerton. Late plankerton, you might get sturdy, and then all throughout Canny Valley, you'll be getting sturdy parts. And then late canny, you get sleek, and sleek is the kind of thing that we get tons of in Twine Peaks. And then in 94 zones, they're pretty rare, but in 100 zones, you'll get efficient parts. Now, the best way to farm these directly is to just throw on an Outlander, your favorite Outlander setup, go into an industrial or city zone, and just punch all of the cars, loot all the containers that you can find, do any of the anomalies or encampments that are metal, and they'll give you all the different parts related to them, along with nuts and bolts, and etc. And you should get plenty of parts just for that. Never underestimate parts. A lot of people like to focus on Sunbeam for the 130s, but efficient parts, it's 30 per gun, and you'll run out of these before Sunbeam pretty much every time. Alright, so we're finally coming up on the ores. So there are two different crafting materials for weapons late game. So you've got malachite, well, not malachite, but like just ores in general. So silver, copper, malachite, obsidian, and brightcore ore. And then we've got one of our little tricks in this game, and that is crystal or quartz crystal. And then we've got Shadowshard crystal and Sunbeam crystal. You might notice a trend here with the 6-star materials. There's also rainbow crystal and spectralite ore. It continues the naming scheme. And I found this to be kind of an oversight by the devs. There is no 2 or 3-star crystal, but quartz crystal still has a 1-star, even though it's not exactly the same as the other crystals. You see, it's not like you're using copper and malachite to craft weapons. However, with the Sunbeam weapons, you are using quartz crystal and Sunbeam crystal. So I think Sunbeam and Shadowshard are meant to be like the main crafting ingredient, and then quartz is basically in trade-off of blast powder. However, only Shadowshard and Sunbeam weapons actually use quartz for their crafting recipes. Every other weapon in the game, you know, the quartz, silver, malachite, all the different ores and beyond, all use blast powder. So when you choose Shadowshard or Sunbeam in your evolution line, it actually replaces blast powder with quartz. So the quartz crystal goes along with the crystal line. This is going to be a common question for a lot of people, and that's like obsidian or Shadowshard. I would say fundamentally, like as a big blanket rule, Shadowshard is always better because it will always and forever have the higher damage per second, but they will have lower durability and a slightly slower fire rate. So if you want your weapons to last a long time and you don't want to craft them very often, go Obsidian and Brightcore. Just know that even though they got a higher fire rate, their bullet damage will be quite significantly less. The only time that I've ever seen Obsidian to make sense is if, like I mentioned, you don't play the game a lot. Somebody in stream told me the other day. Shouts to you if this was you in chat. He said that he doesn't play the game very often and he doesn't like to, he doesn't have time to farm as much, but he really enjoys playing the game. So he always goes Obsidian just so his durability is higher, and that made total sense to me. Like the damage hit is pretty not noticeable. Like if you're a high power level or if you're a power level that's high enough for the zone that you're in and your weapons are powerful, it's not going to make a difference. Somebody told me that they accidentally made their hemlock, obsidian, and they're like, "Oh no, what do I do with this schematic?" I'm like, "Nothing, just use it. It's probably going to be completely fine." The hemlock chews through bullets. You're just going to have to craft a lot less of them than I do. The only difference is my durability is about 300, whereas an obsidian or Brightcore one would have it at 375. So you kind of get a lot more durability there at a slightly lower damage. I'm not exactly sure how much less damage, but it's really not that big of a deal. And I know that like Epic has a whole support page on getting these weapons swapped. I in fact did that on my own. I had my spyglass here. Whenever I was first evolving a weapon, I made the grave mistake that a lot of people make. So it's like, oh wow, I really like this bald eagle. Let me just go to evolve it, and then like you get one path. And once again, I made a mistake. It's a 106. So if I take this a drum roll again, let's just use that for consistency's sake. Your pathways are up here, so you can see the difference in fire rate and durability. And the DPS is like pretty low, 78k to 72.5k. That will spread out a lot later on when it's a 130, but like I said, I think the difference is only about 30%. So it's pretty significant, but it's not life-changing. But my spyglass was obsidian, and this is a high-power single-shot sniper. You don't want this to be obsidian. You want every bullet to count. So I actually contacted Epic and got mine swapped over to Sunbeam because I wanted this weapon to account for as much. And they understand that their upgrade paths are kind of confusing, so you can get a one-time reset for your account, which is pretty cool. One-time reset for that weapon. Now, I am recording this all in one big segment, and this is to relate back to the different ore choices. Malachite ore, it's the exact, all the different ores, but they are the exact same as the parts and the twine and the powders before them. Copper is for stone wood, Plankerton, Canny, this is all throughout Twine Peaks, and you can take it from me as a highest power level in the game. You don't need 130s. In 94s, 94 4 players, and 100 plus zones, I personally prefer 130s because I can afford them and they do more damage. But if they are at all breaking your bank and you don't have Sunbeam, 106s should do just fine for all of Twine. As we've talked about all throughout, you can get the silver in late stonewood. You can get the malachite in late, I should show this just for once. So for example, like in stonewood, you should get copper throughout all of these different zones. But once you start queuing these 15 and 19 zones, you might be able to find silver. And then the same thing in, I'm not going to do this for every mission, you guys don't worry. But like in the 46 and 40 zones, you should be able to find just a little bit of malachite, even though throughout all of Plankerton, you should be finding silver. And that's to say that like silver weapons, 58 weapons should be perfectly fine in all of Plankerton, and Twine Peaks is no different. 106s will do just fine all over here. It's not going to be that big of a deal, so long as your power level stays consistent. If you're like a 100 power level and you're playing these 94 zones, a 106 should be just fine. If you're like an 80 or something and these are still tough for you, then maybe you might want to try out a 130. Just know that you're not going to be finding 130 materials until you're playing in the 100 zone, and you might actually find a few of them in 94 zones. It's just less common as usual. So kind of just a misnomer there. 130s are like everybody's crown jewel, but they're really not what you need. And then to go back to the crystal, they're kind of the counterpart. So all throughout the game, you'll find encampments that have copper as their symbol. I think that's a little outdated, but that's basically an ore symbol. That will give you either, based on the zone that you're in, it should give you, copper, silver, malachite, or obsidian. And then if you're in like a 100 zone, it might give you Brightcore. And then the counterpart to that is the crystal encampments. The crystal ones will give you quartz normally, but they might also give you Shadowshard if you're in Twine, and then like in the 100 zones you might get Sunbeam. Or if you're in Candy Valley, I think you might also be able to get Shadowshard from those. And that's basically the main way to get those. The other ways are you can find them in caves. So the ores that we're talking about here are finally where the caves are going to stand out. You can find quartz and coal and just normal rocks, but you might be able to find the Sunbeam and Brightcore ore. I don't know if I'll have stock footage for all of the different ores, but I'll try my best, you guys. I did find Malachite while I was streaming the other day, so there you go. That is the caves are where you find those. Storm chests are great. I mentioned in a previous segment that recycling the weapons you get from storm chests might be the best way to get these items, because the actual weapons storm chests give you, can be broken down, and they give you kind of a lot of loot. And then, obviously, the encampments I mentioned. Anomalies are... I don't think anomalies can give you the ores, but you might be able to find them from mimics as well. General looting, just searching random containers. That can give you all the different ores that you need. And as always, asking other players. I'm not saying that you should leech off your friends and beg streamers, because as a streamer, I know how annoying that is. But if you were really having a hard time finding these items and you just can't get them, talk to somebody, and don't beg. Just ask, hey, do you have any extra? And if they say no, then it's no. But like me, for example, please don't beg me on stream, you guys. I'm just using it as an example. I save this mostly for friends and when I play with like other random people. I do not need 2,000 malachite. I'll admit it right here in my video. But if I've got a friend who's just starting the game and they want a really nice head start and they're okay with it, then I might drop them a stack. I don't know. It's very rare that I do this on stream. Please do not come from this video and beg me. But if I am playing with people, sometimes I do feel generous, but that's kind of just a on the fly decision that I make. So that being said, you should be able to get all of these yourself. And I mentioned earlier that like if you're in the correct zone, Sunbeam, for example, if you're not queuing 94 and 100 zones all the time, then you shouldn't be using 130 weapons. If you're not able to afford 130 weapons normally, then you shouldn't be using them. And the same goes for Shadowshard and Obsidian. If you can't afford these weapons, then you shouldn't be using them. But hopefully that gives you enough information. By no means have I listed every single way to get these items, because like I said, pretty much every container in the game can give you any item in the game. There are certain best methods to get these items, and I might not have mentioned all of them. For example, Takers and Mist Monsters and Lobbers and all that, they can actually drop Sunbeam, or mini bosses can drop them as well. And that's not like a good way to farm it. You can't really consistently rely on that, but you can get it, so it's something to think about. But yeah, that should cover all of the ores and crystals, and then we can get into the wood, brick, and stone. The wood, stone, and metal, because that's definitely the hardest part. No, honestly, that's just if you don't know how to get wood, brick, and metal in this game, it's I don't know what to tell you. Although there is something interesting to note about this. So wood can be got obviously from trees, and then brick you want to get from rocks, but metal is not actually supposed to be obtained through cars in that respect. The main base game way to get it is technically from metal ore. That's what that thing is on the side of the I forever thought that it was rough ore that was just giving me metal, because if you mine obsidian and brightcore, it also gives you metal, so I kind of just thought that that's what that was. But no, that is well and truly a metal ore sticking out the side of the wall. Obviously, cars and metal materials are just the best way to get it all over. That's definitely where you want to get your metal, but I don't know. I would highly recommend, at least if there's any tip to be given here, build up a lot of it. I personally like to have the 3 rows of 25,000 each. This does not take that long to get if you just throw on an Outlander, a good TV show like I mentioned, and just farm up all these items. I use this a lot because I don't always have time to farm in the middle of missions, and if we're doing a really hard mission, I might be doing like 2,000 metal or more per run of a mission. So we had one day where we were doing a category 4 Atlas and high Twine. It was like a 94-4 player, and we ran it for like 9 hours straight. And I went through about 20,000 metal. And I can, 23,000 metal, and I can assure you that I did not have time to farm throughout that. So to have all this on hand was really, really great. And I know, it makes my storage look nice and clean, and if ever I need to give it to a friend, I could just hook them up. As long as at the end of the day, or whatever, I find time to throw on an Outlander and get those materials back. So That should just about cover it. That is how to obtain every single item and save the world. This was kind of a long video. It's probably going to take me a lot of work to make. Um, Thank you so much to Chaser, Exortion, and I think Cthulhu. I don't know if he actually recorded anything, but he did help me with a lot of the logistics of this video. These guys recorded a lot of the stock footage you guys have been seeing, and that probably saved me a lot of time. As I'm recording this, I haven't actually done a lot of that, but mostly I just wanted to get this guide out there because a lot of people ask me a lot about this game, and I feel like one big video showing you how to get every item and save the world is probably going to be a very good blanket answer to everybody who asks a lot of these questions. And hopefully this helped you out. Maybe I shared some early game tricks that I didn't think were that good, or maybe you got some information that you couldn't get anywhere else. Let me know in the comments below if this helped you at all, and share it with your friends if they're curious about the same thing. Yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more Fortnite videos. Use my creator code in the description below. I don't plug that enough, but if you guys are checking out the item shop, I do have a code. I do stream this game pretty regularly. I do consider myself a streamer before a video maker, even though I really enjoy making videos, and I have been for a long time. There's like 1,000 or more on my channel, so yeah, stay tuned for more of these. If you guys want any videos, any topics that you want me to cover, any hero loadouts, let me know. I'll be sure to get to it. Thank you guys for watching, and have a nice day. This is actually floating away. What?
What is?
There's like a... What? There's like a... There's like a gnome. What? There's like a gnome on a bench with... What? Okay, so there's a gnome on a bench, and there were balloons, and he had a little chest, and then I shot him down, and he... What? Well, I guess that's another way to get, you know, materials. Okay, so I'm gonna take a little bit of time at the end of this video to break the fourth wall a little bit and say that I was making this entire video the day after I had the idea for the video. Again, another shout out to Bubba and Jaffe for inspiring all this big project. And I'm doing this the day before, like as I'm recording this within about 6 or 8 hours. In 8 hours away from now, I think we're leaving at like 6 a.m. We're going on vacation, sort of. My sister wants to check out a college in Texas, so I'm going to be joining them on a, like, 5-day road trip or something. I'm going to make a separate video announcing that on my channel, but the point is, I was working under a pretty decent time crunch, and this video has already taken, like, 8 hours or something, so huge thank you to Cthulhu and Chaser and Exortion for helping me get all the stock footage that I needed. Honestly, some of these guys were really helpful. I wanted to show a lot of footage on this game, and I wasn't really able to get everything that I wanted because there were a few things that I couldn't find, and I'm also recording this as a pardon me in case I miss anything that I said I would add. Just let me know in the comments. It's probably not a big deal. Most of what I could have missed is just stock footage, and if you play the game, I'm sure you know what I was talking about. But if you enjoyed the video or you watched this far in, let me know in the comments. I want you to write like I'm a giraffe.
You guys say Colorado. I'm a giraffe.
I'm a giraffe in the comments if you watched this entire thing. No points if you skip to the end, but that's it for me. Thanks for watching.